High in the rolling landscapes of the Balkans lies one of the strangest mysteries of modern archaeology. In a small Bosnian town, a discovery was made that could change everything we think we know about human civilization. They say it's older than Egypt, larger than Giza, and built by hands long forgotten. Others say it's nothing more than cleverly eroded hills, dressed up as pyramids to lure tourists. One thing is certain: the Bosnian pyramids have ignited one of the most heated debates in history, pitting mainstream science against bold alternative theories. So what's really hiding beneath Bosnia's soil? A lost civilization, or just wishful thinking? Let's dig deeper. The birth of a mystery: how Bosnia found its pyramids. It all began in 2005 when Semir Osmanagic, a Bosnian-born entrepreneur living in the United States, returned to his homeland for a visit. To most people, the hills near the town of Visoko were just that, hills. But to Osmanagic, one hill in particular looked suspiciously like something else. Its sides were unusually straight, its peak unnaturally flat, and its orientation strikingly precise. Where others saw a mountain, he claimed to see a pyramid. And not just any pyramid. Osmanagic believed this was the largest and oldest pyramid on Earth. Bigger than Giza, older than Egypt, and part of a massive prehistoric complex buried beneath the green Bosnian landscape. He called it the Pyramid of the Sun. The announcement set off a firestorm. Media outlets around the globe picked up the story, branding Visoko as the site of Europe's first, and perhaps greatest, archaeological discovery. Tourists began arriving in droves. Within months, Osmanagic had launched the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun Foundation, organizing digs, volunteer projects, and tours. Suddenly, sleepy Visoko was at the center of an international sensation. But where some saw history being rewritten, others saw something very different: a dangerous hoax. Leading archaeologists and geologists immediately dismissed the claims. They argued the so-called pyramids were nothing more than natural hills shaped by erosion and geology. The European Association of Archaeologists even released a statement condemning the project as pseudoscience. Still, Osmanagic pressed on. Excavations uncovered flat stone slabs, terraces of clay and sandstone, and underground tunnels that only deepened the mystery. Was this the discovery of the millennium, or just one man's fantasy gone global? Either way, the Bosnian pyramids were born, and the world couldn't stop talking about them. The hidden complex: sun, moon, dragon, and beyond. If Osmanagic's theory had ended with just one pyramid-shaped hill, maybe the world would have moved on. After all, natural landscapes can sometimes trick the eye. But the story didn't stop there. According to Osmanagic and his team, Visoko wasn't hiding just one pyramid. It was hiding an entire pyramid valley, with multiple colossal structures forming a geometric and astronomical masterpiece. The centerpiece, of course, is the Pyramid of the Sun, rising an estimated 722 feet, 220 meters, making it significantly taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza. To Osmanagic, this wasn't just coincidence. It was a deliberate design by a long-lost civilization that wanted their work to dominate the landscape for eternity. But the sun wasn't alone. To its side stood the Pyramid of the Moon, a slightly smaller but equally intriguing structure. Unlike the smooth slopes of the sun, the Moon Pyramid appeared terraced, built with alternating layers of sandstone and clay. Osmanagic claimed this was evidence of ancient construction techniques, with building materials laid deliberately to stabilize the structure. photos of rectangular stone slabs stacked like bricks began circulating online, fueling speculation that Bosnia was sitting on the oldest architectural site in the world. Then came the Pyramid of the Dragon, the Pyramid of Love, and the Temple of Mother Earth. Together, Osmanagic argued, these 5 massive hills weren't random. They were arranged in a sacred geometric pattern. Their distances and angles formed equilateral triangles, their peaks aligned with constellations like Orion's Belt and the Pleiades, and the entire layout suggested a grand cosmic blueprint. For believers, this was jaw-dropping. If true, it meant whoever built these pyramids had advanced astronomical knowledge rivaling, or even surpassing, that of the ancient Egyptians or Mayans. The implications were staggering. A forgotten European civilization, tens of thousands of years old, capable of precise engineering and mathematical planning. Skeptics, however, weren't buying it. To mainstream geologists, the so-called pyramids were just naturally shaped hills. Bosnia's landscape is rich with sedimentary rock, which naturally fractures into flat surfaces and terraces. The geometric alignments? They argued those were coincidences, the kind you can find if you look hard enough at any cluster of mountains. Pareidolia, seeing order in chaos, was all it was, they said. Yet the more critics pushed back, the more the mystery grew. The aerial views of Visoko showed striking symmetry that was hard to ignore. Tourists hiking up the slopes swore the angles felt too sharp, too deliberate. And the terraces of the Pyramid of the Moon, flat, stacked, and layered, looked far less like random geology and far more like the remnants of human hands. And then there was the claim that sent shockwaves through the debate. Osmanagic insisted that the pyramids weren't just symbolic monuments. They were functioning energy machines, designed to channel and transmit forces that modern science barely understands. That's when the story shifted from archaeology into something stranger, something that blurred the line between science, mystery, and the supernatural. Underground secrets, the Ravne tunnels, and strange energies. If the hills of Visoko are mysterious above ground, what lies beneath them only deepens the puzzle. Just outside the Pyramid of the Sun, researchers began clearing what seemed to be an old tunnel entrance. What they uncovered was a labyrinth stretching deep into the earth, a place now known as the Ravne Tunnels. At first, they looked like narrow mining shafts, the kind you might expect in a region with a long history of resource extraction. But Osmanagic and his team insisted otherwise. These weren't random digs or natural caves. They were deliberate, carved, ancient. According to him, they were the arteries of a vast subterranean network built tens of thousands of years ago by a forgotten civilization. The tunnels twist and turn for hundreds of meters, maybe miles. To this day, a full mapping has never been completed. Every year, volunteers and researchers open new sections, and every time, new questions arise. And the strangest part? The air inside is fresh. Unlike most underground spaces where oxygen quickly dwindles, the Ravne tunnels maintain steady, breathable air, even far below the surface. That shouldn't happen naturally, at least not without some kind of sophisticated ventilation system. And then come the energy claims. Visitors often report odd sensations, tingling in the skin, sudden lightness in the body, an overwhelming sense of calm. Some even say chronic ailments vanish or ease after spending hours underground. Aches lessen, anxiety lifts, and sleep comes easier. It sounds like science fiction, but the number of people reporting these experiences keeps growing. Osmanagic's foundation has tried to back up the anecdotes with science. Using electromagnetic equipment, they claim to have measured ultrasound frequencies of 28 kilohertz pulsing through the tunnels. Frequencies some alternative researchers link to healing effects on human cells. They've also reported unusually high concentrations of negative ions, the same type of particles associated with waterfalls, mountain air, and forests, often linked to improved mood and energy. And then there's the wildest claim of all, a beam of energy shooting straight up from the peak of the Pyramid of the Sun. According to the reported measurements, this beam is about 4.5 meters wide, pulses at that same 28 kilohertz frequency, and continues upward indefinitely. Supporters argue that this is proof the pyramids weren't just ceremonial. They were ancient energy generators, technologies beyond our comprehension. Mainstream science is, unsurprisingly, unimpressed. Geologists and physicists dismiss these findings as misreadings, flawed methodology, or equipment picking up background noise. They argue there's no reproducible evidence, no peer-reviewed data, and certainly no reason to believe a hill in Bosnia is beaming energy into space. But none of that has stopped the steady flow of believers, healers, and seekers who flock to Visoko. Meditation chambers have been set up inside the tunnels. People come from all over the world to lie on stone benches, close their eyes, and soak in whatever force they believe is radiating from the earth. To skeptics, it's pseudoscience packaged as tourism. To believers, it's living proof that our ancestors knew secrets we've forgotten. Either way, the tunnels have become the beating heart of the Bosnian pyramid mystery, a place where science, spirituality, and speculation collide in the darkness beneath the hills. The science clash: evidence, hoax, or history breaker? By the time the Bosnian pyramid story hit its stride, the debate had gone global. On one side, Semir Osmanagic and his foundation were claiming to uncover the greatest archaeological site on Earth. On the other, mainstream scientists were calling it one of the biggest hoaxes of the century. The question wasn't just whether the pyramids were real, but whether the entire project was rewriting history, or simply selling fantasy. In 2006, just a year after Osmanagic announced his discovery, the European Association of Archaeologists released an unprecedented statement. They didn't just express doubts, they outright condemned the Bosnian pyramids as a cruel hoax. They warned that excavation was damaging legitimate medieval remains in the area and accused Osmanagic of misleading the public with pseudoscience. For them, the case was closed. These were natural hills, nothing more. Geologists backed them up. Bosnia's landscape is known for flat sandstone layers and triangular hills, both common geological formations. What Osmanagic's team claimed were pyramid blocks, they said were just fractured slabs of natural rock. The terraces, natural erosion. The symmetry? Coincidence. In their view, nothing unusual was happening in Visoko, except a very successful tourism campaign. But Osmanagic didn't back down. In fact, he doubled down. His team began presenting radiocarbon dating results from organic material found inside the Ravni tunnels, suggesting some of it was as old as 30,000 years. If true, that would make the tunnels older than the Sumerians, Egyptians, and every known advanced culture. The mainstream response? Skepticism. Critics argued that the dated material could simply be ancient plant matter deposited naturally, unrelated to construction. Finding something old in a tunnel doesn't mean the tunnel itself was that old. There were also claims of artificial concrete in the pyramid structures. A materials scientist even reported that some samples from Visoko were stronger and more water-resistant than most modern concrete. To Osmanagic, this was proof of advanced ancient technology. But again, the absence of peer-reviewed studies left the mainstream unconvinced. And that's the crux of the clash: evidence versus interpretation. Believers point to symmetry, orientation, tunnels, and anomalous materials as undeniable signs of intelligent design. Skeptics counter that every piece of evidence can be explained by geology, coincidence, or flawed methodology. To one side, Visoko is the key to rewriting human history. To the other, it's a case study in how pseudoscience can spread faster than fact. Yet, the more the scientific establishment dismiss the pyramids, the more they seem to capture the public imagination. TV crews, alternative historians, New Age travelers, and curious tourists all kept pouring into Bosnia. Every skeptic's article only seemed to fuel more interest. The pyramids had transcended science. They'd become a cultural phenomenon. And that's when the conversation shifted to an even bigger question. What if it's real? What if it's real? Rethinking human history. Let's suspend disbelief for a moment. Forget the critics, forget the accusations of pseudoscience, and take Osmanagic's claims at face value. What if the Bosnian pyramids really are man-made? What if they were built tens of thousands of years ago by a civilization lost to time? The implications are staggering. First, it would mean that the entire timeline of human civilization is wrong. Right now, history books tell us that organized societies, complete with agriculture, architecture, and writing, began around 6,000 years ago. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Indus Valley culture, these are the names etched into the dawn of history. But if the Bosnian pyramids are 30,000 years old, that's a full 24,000 years earlier than the official start of complex societies. It would mean that humans in Ice Age Europe not only survived, but thrived, building monumental structures with advanced engineering, astronomy, and mathematics. It would mean that civilizations didn't just rise and fall, they rose, collapsed, and vanished without leaving a trace. And here's the kicker. This wouldn't be the first time archaeology has been forced to rewrite itself. In Turkey, the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, dating back over 11,000 years, already shattered the idea that hunter-gatherers couldn't build massive, complex monuments. If Göbekli Tepe pushed history back thousands of years, the Bosnian pyramids, if proven real, would push it back tens of thousands. So, what happened to this supposed lost civilization? Where are the tools, the pottery, the writing, the art? Believers argue that a cataclysmic event, a comet impact, a sudden ice melt, a massive flood, could have wiped out not only the people but most of their cultural evidence. The pyramids, buried under soil and vegetation, may have been their only survivors. Then there's the question of why. Why would an ancient civilization in Europe build pyramids? For tombs? For temples? Or, as Osmanagic suggests, as energy machines, designed to channel natural forces for healing, communication, or even power generation? It sounds fantastical, but it's no crazier than the mysteries that surround Egypt's Great Pyramid, or the astronomical alignments of Stonehenge, or the Nazca lines carved into the deserts of Peru. If this is true, then Bosnia isn't just home to a few oddly shaped hills. It's the site of humanity's greatest forgotten achievement. It would force archaeologists to rethink not just when civilization began, but how advanced humans truly were at the dawn of history. Of course, that's a big if, and it's exactly why mainstream science resists the idea so strongly. The higher the stakes, the higher the burden of proof. And until hard evidence emerges, artifacts, tools, inscriptions, skepticism will always outweigh belief. But still, the question lingers. What if? What if Bosnia is sitting on a discovery that changes everything we know about our past? What if the story of humanity isn't linear at all, but a pyramid of its own? Layers upon layers, rising and collapsing, built and forgotten, waiting to be rediscovered. That's the power of the Bosnian pyramid mystery. It doesn't just challenge archaeology. It challenges the way we think about who we are and how much of our story has been lost in the shadows of time. Tourism, transformation, and the believers. Whether you think the Bosnian pyramids are history-changing monuments or just natural hills dressed up with a good story, one thing is undeniable. They have completely transformed the town of Visoko. Before 2005, Visoko was a small, quiet community in central Bosnia, known mainly for its medieval fortress ruins and its proximity to Sarajevo. Tourism was minimal, the economy modest, and the hills that surrounded the town were barely noticed by anyone beyond the locales. Then came Osmanagic and his pyramid claims. Practically overnight, Visoko went from a sleepy town to a global destination. Journalists arrived from around the world. Archaeology enthusiasts, New Age seekers, and adventurous travelers poured in. Hotels, cafes, and souvenir shops popped up to meet the demand. Today, the pyramid tourism industry brings in thousands of visitors every year, injecting millions into the local economy. But it's not just about money. The pyramids have turned Visoko into something much stranger and more fascinating: a pilgrimage site. For some visitors, the pyramids represent a potential rewriting of history, a chance to stand at the cradle of a lost civilization. For others, they are sacred sites, humming with energies that science refuses to recognize. People hike the Pyramid of the Sun not just for the views, but to meditate at the peak, hoping to feel the rumored beam of energy. They descend into the Raven tunnels not just for curiosity, but for healing sessions, lying on stone benches in candlelit chambers, believing the frequencies of the earth can restore health and peace. Workshops, retreats, and spiritual gatherings are now common in Visoko. Energy healers hold guided meditations inside the tunnels. Yoga instructors lead classes on the pyramid slopes. Mystics give lectures about ancient civilizations and cosmic alignments. The pyramids have become more than a possible archaeological site. They've become a spiritual movement. And the people of Visoko? Opinions are mixed. Some residents have embraced the phenomenon wholeheartedly, proud that their hometown is on the world map. For them, the pyramids are a blessing, bringing jobs, business, and recognition. Others remain skeptical, wary of the environmental impact of excavations, or worried that their town's reputation is being tied to something many scientists call a hoax. Still, even the skeptics admit, the pyramids have changed everything. The phenomenon also created a sharp divide between the believers and the critics. Supporters see Osmanagic as a visionary, a man brave enough to challenge rigid academia. They argue that whether or not the pyramids are real, the discovery has opened minds, sparked curiosity, and brought people together from across the globe. Critics, meanwhile, see it as exploitation, tourism dressed up as science. They worry that sensationalism is distracting from real archaeological work in the region, and that genuine historical sites might be damaged in the frenzy. Yet, that tension, the clash of science, spirituality, and community, only fuels the allure. The Bosnian pyramids are no longer just about stone and soil. They are about belief, identity, and imagination. They've become a mirror, reflecting what people most want to see. For some, lost history. For others, New Age healing. For others, still, just a clever tourist attraction. Whatever side you fall on, one thing is clear. The pyramids have put Visoko at the center of a global conversation. And that conversation shows no sign of slowing down. The critics and the supporters, who's who in the pyramid debate. When it comes to the Bosnian pyramids, the stones themselves aren't the only battleground. The real fight is between the people debating what those stones mean. On one side are the supporters, visionaries, alternative historians, spiritual seekers, and everyday believers. On the other are the critics, mainstream archaeologists, geologists, and scientists who call the whole thing nonsense. The supporters' supporters come from every corner of the globe, and they're united by one belief. Something extraordinary is happening in Visoko. Semir Osmanagic, of course, is at the center. To his followers, he isn't a fraud. He's a pioneer. A man brave enough to challenge the establishment and look where others refuse to. They see him as a modern-day explorer, the kind of figure history often ridicules at first, but vindicates later. Alternative historians and fringe researchers also rally to the cause. For them, the pyramids are proof that mainstream science has been ignoring inconvenient evidence of lost civilizations for decades. They point to anomalies in Egypt, South America, and Turkey, arguing that Bosnia fits into a global pattern of ancient advanced societies. Then there are the spiritual seekers. To them, the pyramids are not just archaeological sites. They are sacred energy centers. They feel the tunnels cleanse the body and spirit. They believe the frequencies and negative ions in Visoko create healing conditions modern medicine can't explain. Supporters point to the symmetry, alignments, tunnels, and materials as undeniable. They argue that dismissing everything as just geology is lazy. Coincidence has limits, they say. And to them, the Bosnian pyramids have too many coincidences to ignore. The critics. The critics are just as passionate, only in the opposite direction. Mainstream archaeologists argue that Osmanagic's project is pseudo-archaeology, distracting from genuine research. They point out that no artifacts, tools, pottery, inscriptions, burials have been found to suggest a real civilization built the structures. Without cultural evidence, they say, the pyramids are just shapes. Geologists highlight the natural processes that form Bosnia's hills. Sedimentary rock fractures into flat slabs all the time, they say. Erosion can create pyramid-like slopes. To them, Osmanagic is misinterpreting common geology as ancient construction. Some critics also worry about damage. They claim untrained volunteers digging into hillsides could destroy actual archaeological sites, such as medieval fortresses or prehistoric settlements that genuinely exist in the region. For critics, the pyramid hype is more about tourism than truth. They argue Osmanagic is selling dreams, not science. The clash. This isn't just a disagreement. It's a war of worldviews. Supporters accuse critics of being closed-minded, unwilling to admit that history might be wrong. They say academia protects its own narratives, rejecting outsiders no matter the evidence. Critics accuse supporters of confirmation bias, cherry-picking anomalies, and ignoring the lack of hard data. They see belief in the pyramids as faith, not science. And caught in the middle is the public. Some are convinced Visoko holds humanity's greatest secret. Others see it as a clever tourist attraction. But either way, the debate itself keeps the pyramids alive in the global imagination. Because sometimes, the fight between belief and skepticism is more compelling than the stones themselves. The next chapter. 2 decades later, what comes next? Nearly 20 years have passed since Samir Osmanagic first declared to the world that Bosnia was home to the largest and oldest pyramids on Earth. In that time, the controversy hasn't died down. It's only grown more layered. The hills of Visoko are no longer just local landmarks. They're a stage where science, tourism, spirituality, and imagination continue to collide. So what does the future of the Bosnian pyramids look like? Ongoing excavations. Osmanagic and his Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun Foundation are still at work. Volunteers from around the world continue to descend on Visoko every summer, clearing tunnels, mapping underground passages, and scraping away soil from the pyramid slopes. Each year, the foundation claims new discoveries, whether it's smoother stone terraces, new tunnel junctions, or fresh energy readings. They've also embraced technology. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, and drone imaging have all been used to scan the hills, offering tantalizing images of geometric shapes beneath the soil. Supporters argue these scans prove artificial construction. Critics counter that the images are being misinterpreted. Shifting scientific interest. While mainstream academia remains overwhelmingly skeptical, there are signs of a small but growing shift. A handful of independent engineers, materials scientists, and even a few open-minded archaeologists have suggested that further study wouldn't hurt. They don't necessarily agree with Osmanagic's boldest claims, but they see enough anomalies to warrant closer inspection. If more neutral, peer-reviewed research were conducted, it could bring credibility or final closure to the debate. But until that happens, the gap between believers and skeptics remains wide. Tourism that won't slow down. One thing's for certain, the pyramids have made Visoko a permanent destination. The town has leaned into the mystery, with guided tours, meditation retreats, energy healing sessions, and souvenir stands all thriving. Far from fading, interest in the pyramids seems to be stabilizing into a sustainable flow of curious visitors. For Bosnia, a country still healing from the scars of war, the pyramids have become a source of pride, economy, and identity. Preservation challenges. But there's also a growing concern: how to protect the site. Critics argue that amateur excavation could permanently damage the hills, whether they are natural or artificial. Even Osmanagic supporters recognize that careless digging risks destroying evidence that could settle the debate. Going forward, preservation, balancing tourism, research, and conservation will be key. The big what if still looms. And then there's the lingering possibility, however slim. What if undeniable evidence emerges? What if a chamber is discovered with inscriptions, artifacts, or tools? What if a burial site or ritual object proves beyond doubt that humans shaped these hills? That would send shockwaves through the academic world. It would put Bosnia alongside Egypt, Peru, and Mexico as home to one of humanity's greatest ancient monuments. Every history book would need rewriting. For now, though, the pyramids remain in limbo. A mystery without resolution. A riddle that continues to attract dreamers, skeptics, and seekers alike. And maybe that's the point. The Bosnian pyramids thrive not because the truth is known, but because it isn't. Close in reflection. Mystery or monument? So, after all the digging, debating, and soul-searching, what do we really make of the Bosnia? The next chapter. 2 decades later, what comes next? Nearly 20 years have passed since Samir Osmanagic first declared to the world that Bosnia was home to the largest and oldest pyramids on Earth. In that time, the controversy hasn't died down. It's only grown more layered. The hills of Visoko are no longer just local landmarks. They're a stage where science, tourism, spirituality, and imagination continue to collide. So what does the future of the Bosnian pyramids look like? Ongoing excavations. Osmanagic and his Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun Foundation are still at work. Volunteers from around the world continue to descend on Visoko every summer, clearing tunnels, mapping underground passages, and scraping away soil from the pyramid slopes. Each year, the foundation claims new discoveries, whether it's smoother stone terraces, new tunnel junctions, or fresh energy readings. They've also embraced technology. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, and drone imaging have all been used to scan the hills, offering tantalizing images of geometric shapes beneath the soil. Supporters argue these scans prove artificial construction. Critics counter that the images are being Perhaps the greatest pyramid here isn't built of stone at all. It's built of imagination, debate, and the timeless human hunger for mystery. Next time you hear about the Bosnian pyramids, don't just dismiss them or accept them blindly. Dig a little deeper, keep questioning, and maybe you'll find a piece of history that's still waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for watching the entire video. Make sure to subscribe for more mysteries, history deep dives, and stories that challenge the way we see the past. Until next time, stay curious.